The Australian language is a colourful language, a lexicon admired from around the world for its uniqueness. For example, the word Buckley's, commonly used, understood, but not everybody knows where it comes from. It comes from a man named William Buckley, who broke out of a Victorian prison 200 years ago, and nobody thought he would survive. But then he turned up 30 years later and became quite famous for doing so. His name became associated with chance. What were the chances of that? There was Buckley's chance, very little. Another unique Australian word for male swimwear, and if you haven't worked out where that comes from, then you might like to use your imagination now. A few more. Bogan, an uncultivated, uncouth person. Bingle, a crash. And mullet, a unique hairstyle that's business at the front and partay at the back. So we can put these together and try and have a bit of fun. A bogan with a mullet is at a bingle. Looks like he's wearing budgie smugglers. He's got Buckley's, mate. So the Australian language, colloquialism and slang is alive and well, but the roots of words are often harder to find. And etymology is about the study of the origins of words. It used to be that words only became used frequently over generations, or at least decades. But now in a globalised high-tech world, that's speeding up. And I'm here today to talk to you about the birth of a new word and how it entered the Australian lexicon. And that word is R.A.N.G.A. Now, there's a few in the audience. I can see one there. Now, the etymology is known. The origin of the word is from orangutan, the beautiful reddish brown-haired creature that we all love. But the early use is harder to pinpoint. We think early use began in the late 90s, probably by kids in Australia. And then in the early 2000s, there's some evidence of the word written online. By 2004, it was being printed in publications and newspapers, and the use was increasing. But then in 2007, something quite dramatic occurred. A man named Chris Lilly wrote a mockumentary about Australian high school called Summer Heights High. And in episode 1, there was a scene where he used the word R.A.N.G.A, and it had quite an effect. So I'm going to play it for you now.
You didn't laugh.
Look, how is it okay for you to bully Ben?
Because he's a Ranga.
A what?
A Ranga, sir. Because he's got red hair. A orangutan.
Yeah.
That's what we called him.
And does that make it okay for him to be bullied because he has red hair?
Well, people are racist to
To
fubs.
us.
See,
To
we could be racist to Rangas.
But redheads aren't a race, Jonah.
But sir, there's heaps of them. They're
Look,
everywhere.
I'll tell you.
So this was watched by millions of people, and the word's use increased in the media as well. And it probably gives us an idea about where the word was at this point. In 2007, it wasn't known by everyone. Might have been known by school kids, not necessarily teachers. But why am I here today talking to you about this? Well, in 2009, I was living in St Kilda, and I had a spare room available in my apartment. I needed to fill it to pay the rent. And a friend of mine, R.A.N.G.A, that I went to high school with, he also needed a room, so he moved in. And we became flatmates. But it wasn't just high school that Aaron and I had in common. We both had red hair. And having great friends, they decided to take this on board and call the place the Ginger Palace. So we're like, yeah, great, Ginger Palace, love it. And then we had a thought. Maybe we could have some fun with this. Maybe we could even do some reverse discrimination. So we planned a red hair only party. You could only come if you had red hair, and if you didn't, you had to wear a wig or dye it. And within a few days, the word got out. We had 50 people coming. Within a week, there was 100. So we had to move this party to the local football club. We ended up having over 200 people turn up, all with red hair, red wigs, or dyed, And we raised some money and we had a great party. And we thought that would be the end of it. But the feedback began. People were saying things like, that was just such a great night, what a great concept, when are you doing another one? So we thought if we're going to do another one, we need an association. And we created the Red and Nearly Ginger Association, or R.A.N.G.A. And we started having parties, lots of them, where everybody had to have red hair. And like I said, it could be natural, dyed, or a wig, as long as it was red. The stars of the night were always the naturals, of course. And we'd give out prizes to those that were judged as being excellent examples of the ginger species. But we took it a step further, and we partnered with an orangutan charity. Called Borneo Orangutan Survival. They came to our events, and we raised thousands of dollars for the wild orangutans in Borneo and Sumatra. And one of the ways we did that was by having charity auctions on the night. We'd auction all sorts of things, but some of the best were paintings that were actually done by orangutans. So real rangers helping rangers was our theme there. So we were helping the orangutans in Borneo, that was great. But what about our little redhead friends? What about the guys in the schoolyard that are actually getting a hard time, being picked on and teased? Well, we reflected on this and thought, we need a superhero. And R.A.N.G.A Man was born. R.A.N.G.A Man would turn up to events and do publicity stunts, but he was also deeply involved in trying to help kids in the schoolyard, and he had some comeback lines that could be downloaded from our website. And someone could download these and read them, and if they got a hard time in the schoolyard, they might say something like, "Yep, I'm ginger, but you're stupid. And I can dye my hair." And they proved pretty popular. They were downloaded over 100,000 times. Now, of course, we were out there having some fun, but then there was big influences that came in to have an influence on this word in its early, in its beginnings. And one of those influences became Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. In April 2010, she became Deputy Prime Minister, Julia Gillard, and she was interviewed by Steve Vizard on a radio show, who said to her, his daughter thought of her as a R.A.N.G.A icon. And she responded with, "I'm happy to be a R.A.N.G.A icon up there for the R.A.N.G.As." That was from the Deputy Prime Minister, so it was a big use of the word on a big scale, on a platform. And then only 4 months later, she actually became Prime Minister. And she was interviewed by Kerry O'Brien, who is a redhead himself. And at the end of the interview, he said to her, "A historic day." And he meant a historic day, the first female Prime Minister. But she responded with, "A great day for redheads." Now, we got word of this at the Red and Nearly Ginger Association and got in touch with her staff, and we tried to tee up a meeting, because if she wanted to be a R.A.N.G.A icon, we certainly wanted to crown her one. But we couldn't quite get a time to meet up, so we went after her. And we found a day when she was going to be in Melbourne. She was actually with Hillary Clinton. We had her schedule, and we made this crown, and we tried to get to somewhere she was and crown her. But what actually happened was a man in a suit came walking over to us, talking into his sleeve, the Secret Service, who looked us straight in the eye and said, "We thought you guys were some sort of militia group. But don't worry, we love the Redheads." And this is about as close as we got. And that's her limousine going past, but Aaron still tells me she was waving at him. Now, the publicity stunts continued, and we got a lot of media interest. But there were other influences as well, of course. And one of them was Tim Minchin, who wrote a song in 2010 called Prejudice, all about redheads. And this has also been viewed millions of times, so I'm going to play it for you.
Another ginger, ginger. Yep, when you are a ginger, life is pretty hard. Years of ritual bullying in the schoolyard. The kids calling you R.A.N.G.A and fanny pants. No invitation to the high school dance, but you get up and learn to hold your head up. You try to keep you cool and not get head up, but until the feeling of ill is truly let up, then the word is ours and ours alone. Don't you know that only a ginger can call another ginger, ginger?
So momentum was building, and watching all this happen made me reflect on technology. It was certainly speeding up the whole process. But the theme today here at this event is where dark meets light. It's human nature to notice differences. And when we notice differences, sometimes we discriminate, and that can have a certain darkness about it. And there is a darkness sometimes, unfortunately, about redhead discrimination. After the success of the Red and Nearly Ginger Association, Aaron and I started to reflect a bit more deeply. We thought maybe we could actually influence this word in a positive way in its infancy so that it doesn't end up being too nasty. And in 6 years, the Red and Nearly Ginger Association has become the official Red Hair Association of Australia. We've got over 2,000 members, and we get hundreds of thousands of hits on our website from all around the world. But R.A.N.G.A is about owning the word. It's about holding it up in the light of positive endorsement. It's about taking the power back. For the darkest nearly ginger to the brightest strawberry blonde. Even for an Indian man I met recently with jet black hair and 4 clear strands of ginger in his beard. He told me he was a Gindian. So what's come of all this shenanigans, to use another Australian word? Well, we don't have a red-headed Prime Minister anymore. A lot of the influencers have gone on to do other things. The Red and Nearly Ginger Association continues on to support ginger primates, both here and overseas. But perhaps the most enduring thing occurred with an announcement at the end of 2010. No, 12. And it was from the Oxford English Dictionary. All future editions would include the word R.A.N.G.A. Thank you.